Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, May the 15th. Should have had that number in my head before I started this. Had to do a little math. Last week was the 8th, so today is the 15th. So I hope everybody's had a good week. I hope everybody had a nice Mother's Day if you were celebrating that. If you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. And if you are a returning viewer, as always, thank you for coming back and watching my stitching journey. This is a channel about cross stitch and the stitching that I've accomplished this week. The weather today, it's mostly sunny. It's warmed up quite nicely. We are now in the zone where it's starting to feel like spring is hitting, which is great. And with the weather being the way that it is, we're also in that season where the kids that live next door are out playing in the yard. So I don't think they're out right now, but this is about the time where it wouldn't surprise me if they came out and started to play. So if you hear things with kids yelling and screaming and laughing and balls and trampoline-y thingies, that's generally how that happens. And there's nothing I'm prepared to do about that. That's just how it goes. Grateful that they have a parent who enjoys sending the kids out to play in the backyard, and I approve for all that that's worth. I don't think she cares what I think whatsoever, but I approve. Anyway, with that, let's get into some of the comments from last week. So I enjoyed that so many of you enjoy watching planning videos. Sometimes I enjoy watching them. Sometimes it all depends on what the planning story is. So I'm glad you enjoyed me talking about how I'm planning. And the interesting thing about watching planning videos is you have to find what works for you. And what works for me may not work for you, and what works for somebody else may not work for me. I always like to talk about Jen Lee and her amazing year of 222 starts. I think it's great. She had to do a lot of planning, loved watching the planning video. There's no way on the face of the planet that I'm ever in my lifetime, as far as I can tell at this point in time, will ever have a year where I'm planning on starting 222 new projects. And I will also say plans should always be subject to change. I don't think that sentence is going to change, but plans should always be subject to change. And you know, as I was talking about my planning, the way that I planned for my first year of my 5-year plan is different from how I planned my second year, which is also different from how I'm planning for my third year. Although the 5-year plan continues to roll forward, so it still is a 5-year plan. I've got some stuff templated out to 2026, so that includes the current year plus the next 4 years for the active 5-year plan. And I was having a chat with a friend of mine this week where I was like going, this week the big news is I have firmed up my Lent stitch for next year. It is decided. I know exactly what it's going to be. And as I was, you know, rumbling through things, the great thing is I opened up the project bag and the pattern was in there, the fabric was in there, and it was fully kitted. It needs, I think it's all DMC, that one. Yeah, I think it's all DMC. Anyway, it was all kitted up. I opened it up and went, this is what it's going to be. Firmed up, end of story. My new year, one of my New Year new starts, that one got killed. I knew what that was going to be, and I've changed my mind on that one. So it's still evolving, but the Lent stitch for next year is firm. Firm, and I'm very happy about that. So again, in the background, I continue to plan and think of various rotations and all that kind of stuff. And whatever you're stitching on, if you get to a point where you're not happy with it, just change it. If you're doing whip go and you're not getting the goals accomplished that you wanted, change something. Whip go, the answer I like from everybody else is the board is yours, so you can change it anytime you want because the only person you're accountable to is you. So change your goal, change your project, whatever. If If you're not really enjoying the process, do something to change it that you think will make it more fun and enjoyable for you, because this is your hobby. This is something that should be bringing you joy, other than those moments where you do things to yourselves which drive you nuts. You'll hear more about that in a minute. I'm just looking around going, oh, there it is. It's like going, I'm missing a project. Wait a minute, it's over there. It'll be fine. I can get it, no problem. Because the other interesting thing is that as we've been, we're now getting into the warmer weather, which means this room is more regularly pleasant, more hours of the day. Need a little, probably a couple more weeks, and then like even in the evenings, this will just be awesome. I'll probably be spending the majority of my time here. Unless, you know, we get to like 35-degree weather again regularly this summer, in which case this room is not so pleasant because then it's too hot. But we're getting up to that. So this, yesterday was an interesting stitching day because I brought everything out here and I stitched for a good chunk of the day out here. So I've got stuff everywhere. Because, you know, why limit yourself? Anyway. One of the questions that I got was, okay, you've talked about your planning. Here's the true test. How many whips are you comfortable having? Do you have a maximum number? And the answer is, I don't have a maximum number. I don't have an exact number of how many whips I currently have. I'd say it's probably 20 to 25 in totality, and I'd probably say chop off 5 of those that are probably not actively being thought about or worked into the plan. So that's where I'm at the moment. It doesn't stress me out. I think I can handle some more. I'm expecting by the end of this year I'll probably have a few more, but I don't really know that. So check back later, and when we get to the end of the year, I'll try and do some kind of assessment about, figure out how many whips I started the year with, how many whips I ended the year with, and all that kind of stuff. Look for some stats towards the end of the year at some point and see if I can't figure it out. I do have a little bit of a spreadsheet going, tracking what I have actively worked on in the current year. I don't necessarily say that, you know, if I've got an older whip, I've talked about that I have other whips that you haven't seen yet. Those whips, they are not showing up on the spreadsheet for this year because I have not yet worked on them. So I'm sort of trying to get that update. Some of my dates on there are not so good, but that's, again, who am I reporting it to that's going to go, how dare you not keep your dates up to date on the spreadsheet that you're sort of keeping only for you? Anyway, so there's that. So I don't have a firm number yet. Like I say, I think I can handle some more, but I think in my head, I think if I got over 50, that's my breaking point where I go, like, it's time to just sit down and get some stuff done, and before you do more. So I am trying to balance sort of starting new things, but also getting some things finished. And again, that was one of the things that I worked into the plan for this year, is that I wanted to have more finishes than I had last year. Now, part of it is accomplished by, you know, for example, the monthly cottages. They're a smaller stitch, so it's easier to start those and finish those. So I'm just having a moment going like, no, I've got the things here. I was like, wait, is that missing? No, that's here. Working on the cottages because I can start them and get them finished in a reasonable amount of time. And just, you know, if I did 12 cottages, that's already 3 times as many finishes as I had last year. Now, that's not to say that the projects that I finished last year were of equivalent size. That's a completely different issue. But I'd said to myself at the end of 2021, I wanted more finishes. And so I worked that into my plan. So even, you know, as I'm working through 2022, I've got some things that I want to start and finish. I've got whips that I'm working on that I'm hoping to have finished this year, as well as starting a certain amount of new projects. I always reserve the right to start new projects at any time I so choose, because why not? Okay. And Charlotte, she made a comment, it's like, oh, you had to pull out all the beads. And the answer is, yep, I had to pull out all the beads. And the answer is, I'm happy that I pulled it out. I'm happy that I restitched it. I always find for things like that where you're really second guessing yourself, it's better to pull the pin earlier than later. So I'm really glad that I stopped and pulled them out and restarted it, because it turned to a much easier stitch. I'll be able to do it easier when I pick it up the next time. Same thing, the reason why I restarted the sampler stitches on Silvery Moon, where I had originally started on Pearl Grays, because I just wasn't happy with it. And I didn't want to spend an entire year working on my 9 charts and get to the end and go, eh. That's never a good ending point for your stitching, to get to the end and go, eh, well, I stitched it. If I ever end a project where that's what I'm doing, that's not going to be a good place to be. I could maybe see it if I was stitching something very specifically for somebody else that I decided to give as a gift, where it really wasn't my taste, where you kind of go like, I got it done and I hope they're happy. But that hasn't come to pass yet. So with that, let's get into my stitching this week. There were a couple of other questions, but we're going to deal with those when we talk about the pieces that they were related to. Leave the piece of paper so I know when we come up to them. So what did I work on this week? Well, the most exciting thing is I have a finish. So I have been working on Nora Corbett's Faerie Winter Dream. That's what the picture on the front of the chart looks like. That, of course, is not what mine looks like. I am doing mine on a 28 count Midnight Tryst Jobelan by Fabrics by Stephanie. Just going to highlight again while I show these ones. It was a Jobelan. If you get Midnight Tryst on Lugana, it will look very different. It will not look like this. It will be purple, not blue. So cautionary note yet again. I say that every time I use my Midnight Tryst. But here is my Faerie Winter Dream, and she is finished. Technically. We'll talk about that in just a second. So one of the questions that I was asked was, when you're working on 28 count, are you stitching over 2 or are you stitching over 1? And the answer, and it could have been because I held it up really close, because I asked you to tell me if you could tell what was going on with my moon glow. The answer is, I am generally stitching over 2 fabric threads using 2 fiber threads. So 2 strands of DMC or 2 strands of the Caron Water Lilies. Krynic number 4 braid on 28 count over 2. I'm only using 1 strand, of course, but generally 2 over 2. However, I did my skin 1 over 1, and I'm not going to hold up. I don't think my 1 over 1 is the best on this one, but I'm still okay with my decision. And again, when you hold it from here, the flaws that I can see when I hold it up close, when I look at my stitching and go, this is not your best stitching. Again, I can do that when I'm looking and go like, this is not some of your best stitching and whatever. But from here, and again, when it gets fully finished, and this is one where I'm planning on having it framed, it will be fine. It will hang on the wall and I will think it looks lovely, and that's great. So there are approximately 500 beads that I put on this week. So I've got all of my bugles on there. I've got these bigger ones here sort of at the end of the antennas and down around the bottom of the dress, also up here. Got the back stitching done. So I did the back stitching first around the skin and on the wings. And it was interesting, as I was doing the back stitching on the wings, if I'd even had any of a shadow of a doubt that people would be able to tell where I switched how I stitched using this outer color, the Caron Water Lilies Moon Glow, because I ran out of my original skein. As soon as I got the back stitching on, I'm like, back stitching, forget it. No one will ever be able to tell. The interesting thing is that compared to the picture on the chart, right? So the back stitching at sort of at that top part, so the parts that are sort of extending, is much more noticeable because it's a much paler fabric. I used the called for DMC to back stitch these ones here. And when I was stitching it, I went, it's very dark, it's not very noticeable. And I had a moment, I was like, should I change that? And should I change it to something lighter? Now again, it's gonna look a little bit different on camera. And my answer is no. I'm okay with how it's looking. And I'm totally fine if someone is having a hard time and says they think that these sort of end baubles are just hanging out there and they can't necessarily see the antenna. I call it antenna. I don't know if that's the correct terminology for what it is. For what they're attached to is harder to see. I'm totally fine with that. Again, it's Faerie Winter Dream. I'm going winter dark. That's why I chose this fabric. I think this is a great fabric to do it on. And, you know, at night in the winter, if you can't necessarily see everything, so I'm totally fine with how that came out. Got all my beads on there. It was interesting when I did this one because this is one of the larger sized beads. It doesn't have the number on there. And so it's got the larger size bead in the center and 4 sort of around it. And I was like going, I don't know if that's going to work out so well, but it all worked out. So that's great. So yeah, that's my big finish for this week. Like I say, very happy with it. Stayed up very, very late last night. Didn't get it done and had to sort of after lunch. I think I had about 55 beads left to go, and I just went, I'm just going to sit down and get it done before I get on and do my Flosstube, because I want to say I'm finished. So I'm finished. I think it looks lovely. Very happy with how this turned out. Love the colors of it. Love the fabric I chose. Yeah, so I'm very happy with this. So there's another finish for this year. So again, this is a carryover from 2020. This was not started in 2021. This was a carryover from 2020. But it's finished. Yay! Okay, so I said that it's a technical finish. It's a technical finish. So I have not put my initials on this yet. I am going to put them down here. I'm either going to put them here or over here. And I am going to do them in the same dark gray that the back stitching is in, because it will really blend in, and that's what I like. I debated doing it in the lighter one, and I've decided the dark is fine. So I technically need to get that in. The other thing that I'm debating right now is, so I did the back stitching on the face as charted. The part that's making, I think she needs a mouth and a nose. I'm okay if she only has one eye, because I can justify to myself that the other eye is hidden underneath her hair. But I'm debating whether or not I need to add a nose and a mouth, and I'm really leaning that way. But what that's going to do is it's going to drive me into my other Nora Corbett charts, the other fairies that I've got, and just sort of have a look at how those are charted out and do something there. So you may see this again. It's a technical finish. I've stitched everything that is on the chart. I might be adding something else. So tune in later to see if I do anything about that. Like I say, I finished it after lunch today, so it's gonna get a couple of days of not being looked at, so that I can pretend like it's fully finished anyway. So there's that. So what else did I work on this week? Well, as always, I worked on my May Cottage by Country Cottage Needleworks. I was really hoping to have a finish on this one as well, but I didn't. I've left it on my Q-snap because I worked on it yesterday as well. We're close, but no cigar. So here's where we're at. I said to a friend, I was like, man, it feels like there's a lot of stitching in here. So what have I got left to do? I've got the flowers to do in this. So these 5 flowers, top and bottom. I need to finish my picket fences. I need to do the sun, the beehive, the birdhouse, and the bird. So there's still, you know, a decent amount of stitching to get done on this. It should be done for next week. Like I said, I was really hoping it was going to be done this week, but it didn't. It didn't get completely finished for, as usual, a variety of reasons, but made progress. So there's that. Yeah. I also worked on my sampler stitches. This is the stitch along that I'm doing with Sarah Hughes' Stitchin' Mommy. This is a series of, that's upside down. It's looking, the camera going, that's not right. This is a series of 9 charts by the Drawn Thread. Aiming to get 1 letter accomplished every 2 weeks so that by the end of the year, the whole thing will be finished. So what did I get accomplished? And the problem is it's on the other side, so just hang on a second. All right, so I got certain things accomplished, and then I did other things that made me annoyed. And you'll laugh when you hear about what those are, so let me just scroll down a bit. Okay. And the kids are firmly outside. In case you're wondering, I can hear them. I'm never certain whether or not it's quite as obvious on the video. I know with other floss tubers I watch this, where it's like, oh, you can hear the person recording can hear all the stuff in the background and it doesn't necessarily come through. That may be the case here, but I can certainly hear the kids. All right. So here's where I'm at. So what did I get accomplished? Well, as you can see, I got my God's eyes in. I don't like them. They're in. I'm done trying to fix them. We all know I've tried multiple times. I'm done fixing them. They're in. Funnily enough, the very first one I did here, I think was the best out of the dozen that I did. Anyway, like I say, I started off, I was like, well, that's maybe okay, and then the next one wasn't so good. Then the third one was a little better, and then I was just like, I'm done. Get them in and move on. I'm not going to try anything else. I'm done with them. I'm done. The other interesting thing with all of the specialty stitches in here, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, originally I was like, well, like, figure out whether you've got favorites, and the answer is forget the list of favorites. I've got the list of ones that I don't like. So I have a new least favorite, and it's the God's Eye. This is my least favorite specialty stitch done to date, followed by the Eastern stitch. But I will say, at least at the end of my stitching, having stitched it multiple times in a variety of different ways, I'm okay with how the Eastern stitch came out. These ones I like less. So my number 1 least favorite specialty stitch in the sampler stitches so far is the God's Eye, followed by the Eastern. But we have a strong contender for another one. I had a question about how I did my jacquard stitch from someone, because they said theirs was warping, and so they said, did I have any tips, tricks, advice, things that I had done that are, you know, would be interesting as to how I got my jacquard stitch, because mine is not warping. And the my answer, so I did reply to them, and I said, no, I didn't do anything exciting on this. Clearly, as everybody knows, I am stitching this using a scroll frame, so that does provide a little bit of structure to my fabric as I'm doing it. I also said I actually did all of my cross stitches in this for the letter J before I started in on my specialty stitches. So I don't know if that also helped. They asked if I did it doing a proper jacquard stitch or whether I did any cheating. You know, did I do full satin stitches? Because with a jacquard stitch, the front and the back usually end up looking the same. And my answer is, I don't know that I did it exactly properly according to the diagram, but yes, I did use full stitches. So there's my back. So you can see that the back of the jacquard stitch looks the same as the front. So yeah, I did that. The other thing I did this week is I ended up, very hard to tell on camera, is I ended up using the very light yellow here from my flower and back stitched around the white. I don't know that I love it. I'm still debating whether I should take the white out and just do it all in that very pale yellow. I have until the end of L to decide. So then, of course, so I got my God's Eyes in, blah, 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 started here, started off easily, worked on the cross stitching and got the K in. And then the next thing in the pattern is this big cluster block here, and I just looked and went, there's like a lot of stitching in that, and I just went, I don't have time for that right now, so we'll come back to that. So I decided I was going to come over here and just there's the big cluster block, this specialty stitch, and this specialty stitch for K, and those specialty stitches are the Kensington stitch and the knit stitch. So I started working on the Kensington stitch, which is essentially a back stitch with 2 threads, and as you're back stitching, when you come to put in your needle where the previous stitch is, you split the 2 strands. And so I started it, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. You know, it's interesting because I also looked at, you know, I looked closely at the diagram, like, you know, how the front cover of this particular stitch is, and I don't even like, so this is the sample, the model stitch of this, and I'm not even sure I like it here. So I'm debating changing that. I've got to go back. I didn't have time, whereas like my default position is go back and look at those pictures I took when I was at the Craft Connection in Edmonton. And look and see what people did, and that may change my plan or what I do, but so far, so to the point where I still have my needle threaded and hanging loose, because I started it and did a few and went, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. So I don't know whether it's a case of go slower or do something different. I mean, doesn't sound that hard, right? Take your back stitch, split it in 2, but I'm finding that the fibers, you know, with it being 2 strands of soie d'Alger, that's pretty fat. Again, like the cross stitches that I'm doing, because this is a 32 count Silvery Moon Lugana, like 1 strand of the soie d'Alger is enough to get really reasonable, not full coverage, but very decent coverage. I'm okay with it. Using only 1 strand of soie d'Alger. So I'm finding the 2 strands of soie d'Alger, particularly here, to be quite thick, and I'm not enjoying how it's looking. So I did some, and I stopped and went, you're unhappy? Time to stop. So I need to decide what I'm going to do with that. I'm probably not going to make that decision tonight, because usually I stitch on my sampler of stitches on Sunday nights after I do all my video things. I'm probably not going to figure that out tonight. I think I'm probably just going to spend my time on the cluster block, because I do think there's actually quite a bit of stitching involved in that cluster block. Doing cluster blocks, sort of the satin stitch component of it generally works up fairly quickly, but it's a decent sized chunk in there, so we'll leave that till probably next week, and that'll give me time to research what I'm really going to do with this, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to feel that badly if I just sort of go forget it and just do a straight normal back stitch. That's not going to wig me out at all. But that's where I am on my sampler stitches. So making progress. Got the ridiculous God's Eye stitches in there. So that means GHI is now finally complete. So my first 3 charts are completed. I am expecting, I'm hoping that by the end of May, my JKL will be complete as well. That's my goal, is that by the end of May, that chart will be complete. That's my goal. That's all I can say about that one. All right. Okay. Let's talk about some haul. Haul and Stitchy Kindness. I was over at my parents' place. My mom said, oh yeah, I have something to give you. She's got this package of beads. You know, again, as they're going through things, she's like going, I have this package of beads, and you are the only one I know who does anything related to beads, and I don't know if you have any use for them, but here you go, here's some beads. They are crystal gold beads. They are a size 6 bead, so they're pretty big. They're about the size of those the big ones that I used on Faerie Winter Dream. I don't know that these are they're check seed beads. Are they technically called for in anything that I've got in my stash? Who knows? But I went, it's a little packet of beads. Fine, I'm happy to add that to my stash. The other thing that I stumbled across was I was in a quilting store this week, and was there looking for something not related to stitching. And as I was in the store, I was looking around and there was a stack of drawers that had floss in them. And I kind of looked at them and I went, I think my original pass, I was like, that's the DMC and that's totally fine. Didn't pay any attention to it. Second pass, I looked at it and went, no, that's not DMC. I'm like, well, maybe it's Anchor. I went, anyway, not a big deal. Third pass, because this time I had asked one of the ladies a specific question. They were trying to deal with it. Third pass, while I'm waiting for the answer to my question, I'm looking at them and opening the drawers and going, no, it's not Anchor. So it turns out I have a local quilting shop that is stocking Cosmo Floss. This came as news to me. None of my other LNSs are carrying Cosmo. I don't know that I have charts that call for Cosmo, but I certainly have heard of other stitchers who have used Cosmo and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I just had a moment where I looked at it and went, Cosmo in stock here, fantastic. I decided to bring some home. So I think they've pretty much got the full line of Cosmo there. I didn't bring any of the solid colors home because I didn't care about them so much. I've got a lot of DMC in the house and I'm trying to be somewhat responsible with my shopping. So I'm like, I've got DMC. I don't think I've got charts that really call for Cosmo, but the thing that you can use, that I looked at what they had, and I went, this I could work in, was a variety of their variegated floss. So I brought home a selection. None of you will probably be surprised. I'm trying to figure out how to hold this up without losing them. Here are the skeins of variegated flosses. So one is a, you know, a dark purpley with a little bit of periwinkle in there. What is that? 8069, not surprisingly, a variegated aqua blue. This is 8055. There's that one, and then the one next to it, which is 8054, is just a lighter version of it. 8026, which is a combination of purple and green. If you look at my background, I'm sure you will understand why that combination works for me. 8025, which is a combination of sort of blues, greens, and there is a dark brown in there. A variegated green, so this is 8024. A lighter variegated green, so it's really green, a dark green, a medium green, a light green, and a white. This is 8023. Again, this is sort of a periwinkle purple variegated 5022. And then a much more vivid I was going to say teal. This is not teal. It's not aqua. It's not exactly peacock either. Anyway, you all know. Can't come up with the word. So that is 5021. So I added those to my collection. I generally got only one skein of each of these. I think there were 2 colors. I bought 2 skeins. I'm not terribly worried about dye lots on this. So if I ever, if I kit something up that I'm using one of these for a variegated, I've got them in my stash, so I've got a sense of color. If I kit something up where I'm going, I really need several skeins and I'm concerned about it, all I need to do is go back to the same shop. If you are in the Calgary area, the shop that I was at is over in Lakeview. It is called Out of Hand. It's a small little quilting shop in that mall, just off of, if you're heading south on Crowchild Trail before you run into Glenmore Park. There's a shopping mall there, and so that's where it is. I was in there, saw them, brought them home, added those to my fiber collection. Okay, the other thing that I added into my collection is Stitching with the Housewives was having a Mother's Day sale. It was a 1-day, 24-hour sale. So, you know, while I'm uploading and doing things related to Flosstube, I was checking my emails and went, they're having a sale. Things are 20% off. So I added several of those charts into my stash. I didn't print out the covers. I got the carrot cake one. I got the gingerbread cookie one, because just in case you're wondering, I would love to stitch those up because, you know, I have those shadow box, those white shadow boxes that I got from IKEA before they were discontinued. So that's my plans for those. The frames are already in the house. I know when I downloaded one of them, I was looking at them going, it's pretty much just gonna fit into the shadow boxes. A little bit of room on either side, but you know, not a lot. So that's my plan for those. So the gingerbread cookie, the carrot cake one, I got one of their, I got the forget-me-not one. I got one of the ones that has to do with strawberries, and I did get Home is Where the Wreath Is. we'll figure out what I'm going to do with that. So I added those into my collection. Again, didn't print out any of the covers because now I'm using Markup RxP. So now I have them as digital copies, which means I can just pull them directly into Markup RxP for when they come up to be stitched, which is not any time soon. Currently, I would say for 2023, none of those are in the frame for 2023. I just went there having a sale. They were on my radar that I needed to get them. I secretly am going like, so Priscilla also needs to do yard sauce, and she needs to come yard sauce, sugar cookies. I think she needs to do, yeah, something, a couple of other ones, and then, you know, that'll be my recipe collection for my my white IKEA frames, shadow box frames that I've got sitting in the house waiting for stitching to be accomplished. So those are the things that I have added into my stash this week. Not too bad, somewhat reasonable. Yes, I'm just looking at going, I've answered all of my questions now. So we are now into the topic, and this, I don't know that this is going to take a very long time, so this is going to be one of my shorter videos. Yay. My voice is doing that thing again. Always pays to have a beverage handy. I laughed. I also had a friend this week who said, I watched last week's video. I was expecting to see Jerusalem. Why didn't I see Jerusalem? I had to go because you clearly weren't paying any attention because I said Jerusalem's gone away for a bit. And I'm sticking to that. It's not coming out for a bit. It's not going away till next year, but it is coming out later this year, but not for a bit. All right. So the topic for this week is getting together, which is going to, I can see some of you going like, okay, fine, I don't understand. So here's what I've been thinking about this week. I'm throwing this out to you local watchers to see if you would like to get together to do some stitching. So of the LNSs that I have around me here, man, I think the beverage actually made it worse. Of the LNSs that are around me, one of them does have some room to stitch. The other two do not have room for stitchers to come in and stitch. So I've been looking this week sort of for a couple of options where I can get a room that I could have people come and stitch with me, if you're interested. So number one is this of interest to anyone that is in the local Calgary area at all? The two places that I have currently got on my radar, so I'm starting with the Calgary Public Libraries, and I've specifically looked at the library in Signal Hill and the library that is by Westbrook Mall. Couple of reasons for that. One, so yeah, if you're not local, actually, if you're not local and you're not interested in this at all, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed what you see. Have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, get some stitching done. Look forward to seeing you next week. For those of you that are local, so this is if you're in the greater Calgary area. So those are the two libraries that I've looked at. I looked at a third one, but the room didn't have any windows, so I've kind of been looking for ones that had windows. I also was looking for ones where there was parking and easy access. So for example, like the downtown Calgary Library, which I know has some really lovely rooms. I've been in them. I've kind of nixed that one just because I'm like, not everybody's comfortable coming downtown. You have to pay, generally would have to pay for parking. So I've decided to start with these smaller ones and, you know, how it moves from here. Because one, I don't know if anybody wants to come stitch. So I'm going to put my email address in the notes section below. So if you are in the greater Calgary area and you would be interested in getting together to have a stitching get together, please send me an email. For the library ones at the moment, I can only book the rooms in a 30-day window. So 30 days from now is the current, well, based on what I can book online, I can only do it in 30 days. When I was talking, so I was visiting one of the libraries and was talking to them about the room and how you book it and kind of those kinds of things. I don't know if I phoned in and booked it from the central library if there were other options, but anyway, according to what I can do online, I can only go 30 days out. What I'm currently thinking of is a Saturday, just because that would give, I want to make sure that people, you know, if you're working, that you can come to this. So I don't want to do it for, you know, for example, a Monday morning where that might work for me, but if you're working, you sort of go, well, thanks for planning something that I can't possibly come to. I also acknowledge that with people's shift work and all that kind of stuff, that some people going like, when you talk about Saturdays, that's not good for me either, and I totally get that. We're going to start this as a test balloon. We're going to see how it goes. So, like I say, I've got those two libraries are kind of the ones that I'm looking at, because the room sizes for those two libraries can accommodate a different number of people. So the one at Westbrook is the one that can hold more as opposed to the one at Signal Hill. The arrange, like, it would have a certain number of tables. Anyway, you know, tables and chairs, ta-da, that's what the room would have. I haven't gone in so far to sort of see whether or not I can use the technology in those rooms to invite Zoom people. So I'm going to start with an in-person, see how the rooms work out, and then if I can figure out how to do the Zoom thing from the library, then you could also let me know if you would be interested, for those of you that are not living local, because I know that there are a large number of you that are not living local to me. If sort of being able to, on the TVs that are in the room, if I can get them all hooked up, if you would be interested in sort of stitching with us via Zoom in that location. So for the 47th time, email is in the notes section below. If you are local, please let me know if you are interested in participating. If you can give me an idea of which of the Saturdays, and I'm going to take it out sort of to the end of June. I don't know that I can get this pulled together in May. So if you can tell me sort of what your optimal days in June, sort of from now till the end of June would be, you know, let me know that. The other thing that I would be interested in knowing is if there's a certain, like, you know, if I did a 4-hour block, is that enough? Is that too much? Would you like it shorter? I don't know that I can necessarily get it for a whole day, like sort of, I'm trying to remember what the booking looked like when I was looking at it online, you know, but anyway, like, is 4 hours enough? What do you think the starting time should be? You know, should it generally be a morning? Should it go over a lunch hour? Should it be after lunch? Again, everybody's schedules are different. And I also acknowledge that on any given week, you may go, I haven't even looked at the Saturdays in June, so now I'm just making up dates. So don't pay any attention to the numbers. Like June 7th, I can do morning. June 14th, I can do afternoon. June 21st, forget it. Or actually, June 21st, I could do morning or afternoon. And June 28th is forget it. We're too close to the long weekend. I got plans. There's no way I'm coming for stitching anything. Anyway, if you can just give me a concept of, you know, sort of what that looks like, because then I can go in and I can look for what the availability is, and based on that level of interest, whether or not, again, the smaller room is at Signal Hill. The larger room is at is the library by Westbrook. if you're someone that sort of is going like, I don't have my own car, getting around is challenging. The good thing is the library at Westbrook is directly above the LRT station, the Westbrook Mall LRT station. So if you could get to an LRT, you'd be right there. If that's a consideration for you, please let me know in your email as well. So I'm floating this out there as a test to see whether this works at all. I know for me, since one of my LNSs closed quite a few years ago, the opportunity for people to get together and for you to come in and just randomly stitch has sort of been curtailed significantly. So I thought I would take this opportunity to try to get some of us together. I'm going to start with sort of people who watch my Flosstube channel. So I want to leave it sort of open for the people who are local, who are actually Flosstube watchers of mine. If I don't get enough interest, I may come back and say like, okay, maybe some of you have other stitching friends that you stitch with that might like to come in person. I know I have a couple of other stitching friends that they don't necessarily watch my Flosstube. It's not that they go, there's no way I'm watching your Flosstube, but in their lives, they kind of go like, if I get around to Flosstube, sure, I'll give you a checkout periodically, but they're not regular viewers. But I'm trying to get my stitching community around my Flosstube an opportunity to meet each other. And again, I know there are a lot of you that are long distance and sort of going, thanks, that there's no way I can come to Calgary for like a Saturday 4-hour stitching thing. I totally get that. Like I say, if this sort of comes together, I do have, because I have looked at sort of what the technology is in the room, so I just need to check a little bit further sort of to say like, you know, could we have a group of people and then could people come in via Zoom for those of you that are elsewhere. So again, if that, for those of you that are located outside of Calgary where coming here is not a reasonable thing, you can also shoot me a note and sort of say, yeah, I can't come, but if you ever get the Zoom thing going, I'm in for that. I know things like, again, I'm thinking a Saturday, because I would like to tie it in with the people that would be coming in person. So I know that Garon Stitchery has a Zoom group and they meet on Sundays, and I think that goes really well. I'm generally not there on Sundays because I'm either stitching myself, like I say, after lunch I worked on my thing, and then I'm recording my own video and trying to get it up. I keep saying to myself, if I got my act together, record early, and then I could participate in the Zoom group. But anyway, you can let me know if that's an option for you. So I thought I would throw that out there, see if there's any interest. If there is, I will be talking about this more, just to see how it goes. Anyway, I'm throwing it out there. Let's see if we can get together, and let's see if this has interest for any of you at all. And with that, that's my big topic for this week. Not the longest one. Oh my goodness, this is going to be less than an hour. I know some of you really like the long ones, and some people don't like the long ones. I watched the Sunshine Stitchers last night because I was planning on putting them on and stitching, because usually they're good for at least an hour, if not an hour and a half. When I got to their video, I went, sorry, is there a one missing off the front of that number? It was a very short video. Again, they were trying to accommodate things that they had in their schedules, which is totally fine. But I kind of went, it's a short one. Guess I'm gonna have to go watch something else. Anyway, with that, that's all I've got for you today. So I hope everybody has had a good week. I hope you are all staying safe. I hope everybody's staying healthy. I hope that you're finding some time to do some stitching and that it is bringing you enjoyment. I am as always thinking of the people of the Ukraine. I'm also thinking of a few other people in other parts of the world where there are some unpleasant things going on. So don't think that if you're in one of those that I'm not necessarily thinking about you. I'm just, anyway, the world, there are things going on in the world these days. As always, if you have comments, questions, topics you would like me to address, I would love to hear from you. I love the comments are sort of my way of sort of feeling like we're having an actual conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this and you want to get notifications as my videos are coming up. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.